Hey everyone, welcome to the Kickstart Your Book Sales podcast. I am Monica Linnell and I am here alone today because Russell is in Paris. I think I was supposed to find somebody to interview, but I did not do that. So what we're going to do instead is I have a presentation. And so this was a presentation that I've only done once. I recently did it at NINC, which is Novelist Inc., and they don't record anything. So I changed it up a little bit, but I wanted to present it here. And it's also going to be a 8-part series on the podcast, but I wanted to present it here first. So let me pull that up. Let's see, here we go. Okay, and hopefully this works. All right, so let me just check. Oh, good. Okay. So, again, it's going to be kind of, I don't know if it'll be awkward or if there'll be some little random things just that we need to do for the recording. But definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And if you are coming to us from Facebook, if you'll recall, there is a issue with Facebook where you have to connect before you have to connect to StreamYard before we can see your name. But if you are here, definitely feel free to say hi. Feel free to drop your name and also where you're from. And then as we go along, feel free to ask questions again. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is 7 mindset shifts before running a Kickstarter. Hi, Boana. Okay, 7 mindset shifts before running a Kickstarter campaign, launching a Patreon, setting up a store on your website. It's kind of all the same. And so this is why we did this presentation, is we basically wanted to, we work with so many authors across many different areas right now. So Kickstarter, setting up your website store, doing direct sales really in any scenario. Hi, Jonathan. So good to see you, Jonathan from New York. And launching your Patreon, just all these new things that are new to authors, specifically fiction authors that are new to publishing, just all these cool opportunities. So yeah, so what we noticed though is that there were some common themes across all of those things. And so we will get into that as we get into the mindset shifts. Just a reminder to join this group if you're not already in it. Hello, Facebook user. I don't know who you are, but feel free to let me know. It's not showing up though. All right. Okay. So advanced Kickstarter strategies for authors. It's a free Facebook group. You can go to facebook.com/groups/Kickstart Your Novel, no spaces. And when you go there, there's actually, this is an older screenshot. There's over 500 members now. And we have become a little bit more active in this group than we have been for the past couple months. So just so you know, if you're like, yeah, like there's not much going on in this group. Definitely there's going to be more. We're going to be running the challenge again at the end of October. We're going to, which we haven't run it since April. So like those videos just aren't anywhere. And we do have a social media plan for it, but we just don't have someone to implement it. So if you are a social media person, like contact us, send me a direct message on Facebook, because we are trying to hire somebody for that. All right, so let's keep going. Yeah, this is all weird in the tech. So this group, not this particular group, because that's our free group that I was just talking about, but the group that we have that is for our paid course, Kickstarter Accelerator, has earned over 800,000 in the last year from about 150. We're getting over 200 now. About 150 to 200 students and experts, many of whom, like most, I would say 90% of the students, this is their first campaign on Kickstarter. But we believe, the other cool thing about this number is that we believe that it's all like new money to publishing. So we're not hearing any reports of people saying that it's cannibalized their sales on Amazon or on other retailers. So we believe it's all new money to publishing, which is pretty exciting because it's going to I would say like 99% independent authors as well. So I think we have a couple hybrid authors in there. The other interesting thing about this, there's only been one campaign that was over 50,000, and I think two campaigns that were, so the $50,000 one was from one of the experts. There were two campaigns over 40,000, which were from me and Russell, basically. So like we're spots 2 and 3 on the leaderboard, I should say. But the cool thing about this is really that the wealth is also so well distributed across many authors. So it's not one author made like 400K and then everybody else made 400K. So that's very cool too. The reason I wanted to share this is really it's going to come up later on. So I'll keep going. So I'm going to very quickly go over what are fan-based platforms, what is direct sales, what are fan-based platforms, those types of questions. So really the main ones that we're talking about right now in the industry as a whole are Kickstarter and Patreon. And so I just want to explain very quickly, like Kickstarter is a pre-order campaign platform. A lot of people don't really know that. They think it's like a crowdfunding, like begging for money type of thing. And then Patreon is a subscription membership platform. So these are basically just two different models, and you're going to use one or the other platform based on what you actually want to do. So are you setting up like a one-time pre-order? Are you setting up a subscription membership? And depending on that, choose your platform. These are what are considered fan-based platforms. They're often considered crowdfunding platforms. So, Kickstarter, I think, is kind of the number one brand that probably comes up when the talk of crowdfunding comes in. Hi, Audrey. Good to see you. The talk of crowdfunding comes in, but then happy Friday. Fan-based platforms. Oh, sorry, I just totally got distracted by talking to people. Okay, so let me start again. So yeah, Kickstarter is probably the number one brand when it comes to crowdfunding, but I've also heard a lot of other platforms like Patreon or Substack or just OnlyFans, Ko-Fi or Coffee. I don't know which way you say it. Ko-Fi, Medium. Like I've heard of other platforms being considered crowdfunding platforms as well. The way I think of these crowdfunding platforms is that they are really a cross between direct sales on your website and retailers. And so we'll talk more about this as the presentation goes on, but for retailers, they have a ton of algorithms that help bring visibility to your book. And on your website, there are 0 algorithms. So there's nobody and nothing helping you drive traffic to your book besides you. And so the fan-based platforms, they're kind of in between. They have a couple mechanisms built in usually, but they're not full-on algorithm driven like many retailers are. It's also not usually you're driving all the traffic or you're doing all the legwork. So hello, Sherry. Awesome to see you here. All right, so who should be using them? This is the question that we ask for Kickstarter. How would your career change if you swapped out $2 per sale for $25 per sale? On retailers, when you're selling a book, you will get about $2 to $7 average per per reader with royalties. And then on Kickstarter, which is, again, it's a one-time pre-order platform, selling a bundle for $25 to $50 average per backer. And that's also, to some extent, that's true on Patreon. I would say that if you're doing a subscription or a membership, you're probably still parceling it out, but to be in the subscription membership for a year, it's probably at least, I think the lowest amount you can even do is $1, but for most things, it's either like $3, $5 is kind of the lowest tier. So we're still talking a $25 to $50 purchase per year. Okay, so then why use it? Why use these platforms? More money per reader, higher revenue with fewer readers, like I just kind of talked about, finding more readers and creating more fans, collecting customer data from your readers. So one big thing about retailers is that you have none of the data. You don't own the customer in any way, versus when you work with these fan-based platforms, those platforms have established some of the trust already with your readers. So it's not just like this rando website that somebody's ordering from. There's trust, there's like mechanisms, there's kind of an understanding of how the platform works. But you get all the emails, you get all the data about your customers. They are your customers. They are not the retailer's customers that you're kind of co-opting or borrowing. Diversification of revenue streams. And then the big one to me is what that number was earlier. It does not appear to cannibalize sales on retailers when you use the fan-based platforms. All right, so common questions and answers. Can I use fan-based platforms if I'm in KDP Select? You can, and this is probably one of the most common questions we get is like, how do I do this when I have my ebook in exclusivity? So for those who don't know, KDP Select, it's the Kindle Unlimited program. You have to be exclusive with Amazon in ebook, and you can still use it. Usually what you have to do with that is you release that ebook ahead of time before it goes into Kindle Unlimited, or you just focus on print or audiobooks. You focus on a different format that's not ebook. Can I use fan-based platforms if I don't have fans? So actually, this is probably the number one question that we get. It really is this question of, I have an audience of 0. Like, how does this help me find readers? And my answer to this is always that there's nothing that's going to take the place of you building your audience. Like, you're just like, at some point, like people have this question about audience of 0, and it's like, at some point you're gonna have to build your audience. So whether it's a fan-based platform or the retailer, like, you're gonna have to start marketing and building your audience. So what I would say is, yes, you can. And the marketing that I would suggest when you are starting out, that is kind of no different than retailers, is really around building your email list. So, get a sample of your book together, whether it's the first couple chapters, whether it's a prequel story, prequel novella, whatever it is, something that gets people a taste of what you are about to offer. Get it onto a couple of sites, Book Funnel, Story Origin, Prolific Works, Book Sprout. Those are all options. You can also just give it away from your website. Like, there's so many ways to basically give away your sample in exchange for an email address. And so once you start doing that, then you will build up this email list. And there are lots of ways to get that. I don't know if you want to call it a landing page out. So you basically need a sample of your work, post it to all of these websites, get it on your own website in exchange for an email address, and then send a ton of traffic to it, basically. So like, the best way to do that is join promotions on BookFunnel, Storage, wherever. Do cross promotions with other authors. Do, drop your links in groups with permission, of course. But yeah, it would basically just be, find people to make this offer to. And then you can even use ads if you want. That's kind of, in my opinion, more advanced. But yeah, that would be what you would do. And it's just no different on Kickstarter. You do the same exact thing. You've got to have an email list of people who are interested in what you're doing. And then from there, with Kickstarter in particular, we usually recommend that you build your page, your Kickstarter page. You get a pre-order or pre-launch page, and then you try to drive traffic to that too and try to get followers for that. And that will give you a good indication. So I'll very quickly show that just so that people kind of understand what that even is. So I have a pre-order page up right now. Let me share the screen on that. And apologies if you're listening from the podcast, but this is pretty much what it looks like. It's very simple page. And for this one, this is actually a campaign I'm hoping to launch next week. I'm not ready to launch it next week, but I'm hoping to. And it basically, has a picture, a header, or like a title, and then a very short description, and then you have this button that's notify me on launch, and you try to collect followers for that. So when you collect the followers on this page, like the good thing is that you'll know how well it's doing or how poorly it's doing, and you'll kind of be able to start to gather like how many people are going to show up on day one of this launch. So you do this, you will get your followers. Kickstarter will send an email to those followers when your project launches, so that's super useful. And then they do a bunch of follow-up throughout the campaign too. So it's a pretty useful tool, I think, and part of Kickstarter's algorithms, which is so nice. All right, so going back over to the presentation. Okay, so we're almost through this, and then we'll get to those 7 shifts. Can I use the platforms if I live overseas? This is a big one because for a lot of these fan-based platforms, they are heavily US-based readers that are on them. So especially Kickstarter, but also Patreon. And that can be a challenge if you're trying to do print books or basically any physical products. So what I would say is you can still use them. You can do a lot of digital only on these platforms. I think for my last campaign, all the tiers $100 and below, they were digital only. So we didn't have any, like paperbacks or anything at those tiers. And that was probably the majority of, what ended up being purchased. And then like all the tiers above it, there were some physical tiers, but a lot of it was still digital. I did that for my Water's Dark and Deep campaign as well, so it also still works for fiction. But yeah, you can definitely do, and depending on the project, you can definitely do if you're overseas, if you don't live in the US. Also, there are other ways around it too, where you can just charge more shipping, or you can focus on finding, like, let's say you live in the UK, you live in Australia, you can focus on finding Australian readers or European readers that would be more likely to back your campaign. So you can do a lot of that stuff and just charge extra shipping, because that's kind of just what it costs. Is it begging for money? I think this question is really about, crowdfunding has a stigma, but then I also think it's about, if I'm an established author, is it okay for me to use it? Like, are readers okay with it? Do they think that I should be able to pay my bills without without them? I also think there, from like a beginning author's perspective, I think a lot of it is it's really around like, I don't want to mess up my career. So for the beginning authors, like, there's almost nothing you can do to mess up your career, I promise. I've been around for so long. I've made like 5 million mistakes. So you're not going to mess up your career. I've probably messed up my career like 1,200 times, and I still have a career. And then for the established authors, I think that readers, they really see it as a pre-order opportunity. And so there's that. And then I also think you can explain to them. So I think there is that education element as well. You can say like, this is a pre-order. I'm collecting the money ahead of time because I got to do a print run. So that's like kind of the most common reason to do it, is like, I want to do a bulk print run, and that's like thousands and thousands of dollars. So I'm collecting the money ahead of time so that I can, do the print run. It's cheaper, and then everybody gets a better rate. Or a lot of it is also, and then I can make this book to begin with, or I can make this thing to begin with, because there are lots of minimums on a lot of these things. All right, so that's kind of the intro to all of this. A little bit longer than I meant, but let's see. Oh, okay, we don't have any questions. Cool. All right, so now this is 7 mindset shifts, and I will try to run through these pretty quickly. So this one is the first, I'm calling them mistakes. It should probably be mindset shifts. But amongst, Kickstarter, Patreon, all sorts of direct sales avenues, we see this mistake a lot, and that is replicating retailer catalogs. So what we basically see is, I'm selling this thing on Amazon, like an ebook or a box, like a bundled set of ebooks or a print book or whatever it is. And now I'm just gonna kind of replicate that onto my website or onto Kickstarter or onto Patreon or wherever. And so what we try to teach is you can't compete with retailers. So you'll never be able to print cheaper, ship faster, or make downloads easier than Amazon. That last one, I think BookFunnel is pretty close. So if your readers are used to BookFunnel, then you kind of can do the last one, but you definitely cannot print cheaper or ship faster than Amazon. They have spent billions of dollars to make that possible for them. So what we try to teach is that when you're doing anything direct, you want to think about what are your strengths, not try to match the retailer's strengths. So we just see that all the time where people are looking at the retailer and then they're just kind of like, okay, well, I'm selling this here, now I'll sell it over here. So instead, you want to make you want to sell the things that you're not selling at retailers, and you want to sell things that are exclusively on fan-based platforms. So this could be all sorts of stuff. The one thing I try to tell people is think of things that you wish you could do, but that you can't sell at a retailer. Not that you aren't selling at a retailer, but that you literally can't sell it at a retailer. So like, what is your laundry list of things that you wish you could do at Amazon? And so some of mine are, I wish I could sell an ebook, audiobook, and print book all together as a bundle, because I have lots of people who want that, who are like, I bought the audiobook and the ebook, or I bought the audiobook and then I bought the print book. So that's for me. Granted, I'm nonfiction, doesn't happen as much in fiction, but that's like a huge one for me. The other thing, some of the other things I want to be able to do bigger bundles of ebooks, where Amazon still has the $9.99 ceiling on the 70% royalties. So that would be something that I would sell on, and that I have sold on a direct sales site or on a Kickstarter or whatever. I'd like to be able to sell all sorts of things. Like I wish they had print on demand for card decks, for example, or tarot decks, oracle decks. I would have like a million things to put on there, but instead I have to, do short print runs of them and manage the inventory myself and all that stuff. So think of those things, and those are the things that I would then go and sell on the fan-based platform. Also things that people have asked you for and you're like, this is way too much work. There's no easy way to do it on a retailer, so I'm just not going to do it. Those are good things for the fan-based platforms. Hello, Shannon. Good afternoon. All right. Okay, so mistake number 2, porting over marketing tactics from other retailers. So this is kind of similar to the last one, which was essentially porting over products from other retailers. But this one is really about the marketing too. So the marketing is also, you need a different marketing approach to a fan-based platform versus a retailer, because they have different mechanisms to help you. So I'll kind of explain that here. So what you're looking at on the screen, it's the 10 stages of audience. And if you're listening on the podcast, sorry, I'll try to explain this for you. But basically it's a reader journey. So there are 10 stages. Starts with target audience, lead, prospect, trial reader, incoming buyer, reader, fan, true fan, evangelist. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to move people through this, these stages or this funnel, whatever you want to call it. You've probably seen a reader journey somewhere. This is just my iteration of it. And so then the second chart that I have which again, I'll try to explain for the podcast listeners. It's basically, it has the reader journey on the left-hand column, just all the way down. And then across, I have Amazon KU, Amazon sales. These are all columns. Wide retailers, so Apple, Google, Kobo, B&N, Barnes & Noble. And then fan-based platforms, I have Kickstarter and Patreon, and then direct sales. So direct sales from your website, direct sales from like live events and signings. So again, these are all columns on there. So hopefully you're kind of picturing a grid now. And then I've created kind of a key or a legend. So there's dark circles that are the platform helps your book a lot, helps readers discover your book a lot through their algorithms. And then an empty filled circle is the platform does not help readers discover your book, does not help readers who are at that stage in the reader journey. And so if you look at the chart, Amazon, they're very good. They have dark circles under being able to find readers, basically, and medium circles under getting readers to buy, getting fans. So they're kind of basically the point of that is that they have a lot of algorithms that help with visibility on their website. And so they really do their best to get your books in front of readers who might like your books. The wide retailers have less algorithms, fewer algorithms to kind of do the marketing of your books. And, they're often, they're looking for you to kind of send some of that traffic. And then the fan-based platforms, basically even less, especially Patreon doesn't have much of anything for finding you readers, whereas Kickstarter has some stuff for finding you readers. We always say that if you can bring 25 backers to Kickstarter, then Kickstarter will find you another 25. So it's about 50-50 on Kickstarter. Patreon, they have no algorithms for visibility. And then you get to your website and it's kind of even worse. You get to events and there's a little bit, right? So like if you go to Dragon Con, for example, you can be pretty confident that there will be some fantasy, sci-fi, and horror readers there. So like there's a little bit of help to get people there. So, and then as you go down that reader journey, you'll see that some platforms are better at helping you cultivate readership and fandom. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I wanted to give some data on the algorithmic stuff because we tell people this all the time that they can't launch a book on Kickstarter like they do on Amazon. And so, I took out I didn't take out all identifying data, but I took out most identifying data. But this is a person this was a book publishing project. They launched like they were doing a Kickstarter. What they do is they had a strong launch week. We typically try to get our students to have 5 really strong days during their launch week. And then we noticed it kind of peters out to kind of a sustainable daily raise. So in this person's case, they were raising a lot per day. And then at the end, what we expect to see is the last 3 to 4 days, there's a tail going up as well. And that is going to be dependent on really, even when kind of your sales are kind of, or your raise per day is kind of staying pretty level, you should still be doing things that market your book, because by the end of the campaign, all of it's going to pay off. And so if you've done it well, then you should see kind of this hook at the end of your campaign as well. And so you can see like when somebody launches, like it's Amazon, these numbers are in perspective, but you can see this second campaign that they launched really high the first day, and then their second day, was like not a lot of money, but it was like significantly lower, probably less than a fourth of what they did on the first day. And then the next days were kind of lower still. And so then as it went across, in the middle of the campaign, it wasn't, I mean, both these campaigns did huge numbers, but the campaign, the second campaign kind of sorry, well, we call it the dead zone, but it kind of, yeah, or I don't know if that's the right word. I was gonna say deadlined, but it flatlined. Sorry, I'm just combining two things. So we call it the dead zone. It's when the raise per day flatlines, and so it goes to kind of like close to zero, basically, compared to the beginning. And so you can kind of see that for the second one, it flatlined pretty low, to where it could probably have been double or triple per day. And then at the end, there was not really the same bump. And so that strategy works really well on Amazon. Basically, on Amazon, you want to have a huge launch day. You want to, kind of maintain sales for the next couple days, or like maintain rank for the next couple days. And then Amazon's marketing algorithms, and visibility algorithms will start to take over, and will kind of keep the book plodding along at the same amount. And so Kickstarter doesn't really do that in the same way. So we always recommend, plan your launch for, like, yes, you want people there on the first day, but plan your launch for, try to sustain your launch activities for at least 5 days, and then try to be marketing in the middle, so that you can have a big spike at the end as well. And so we estimate that, Russell and I went through these estimations. Basically, the second campaign, we think it probably lost, about half of the potential revenue that it could have had if they had kind of, looked at like how Kickstarter campaigns launch, and like the shape of the Kickstarter launch, and instead launched that way. So, and this is not to like give this campaign criticism. It's just more of like, we just want to show you that the data is there. You're able to go find it, and you'll see this kind of over and over again, with books that launch a lot more like Amazon, on Kickstarter, rather than launching like a typical Kickstarter campaign launches. And so there's nothing special about these two. Like, we could pull just dozens and dozens of, campaigns, and we could show you that like these are not unusual trends. This is kind of like what all these graphs look like. So that is that. Okay. So then mistake number 3 is going after the same 20% of readers that retailers serve. And so this one, it's kind of like Russell's thing that he talks about. So, the way we talk about it is catalog versus direct sales. So retailers are catalog sales, fan-based platforms are direct sales. In sales, 1 in 5 people that you encounter, that are in your target audience, ideal target audience, 1 in 5 are going to be a yes, 1 in 5 are going to be an easy no, 3 and 5 are going to be undecided. And so Russell has actually, he tracked his sales for like 4 years at conventions to get this data. And it's not just him. This data is in like every sales book you would read. It's basically this, but Russell actually tracked this across, many, many conferences, and conventions that he used to do. Probably like, I think he did like over 100 conventions or something in a couple years. But he saw this pattern really over and over again. And so what he says and what he teaches is that, 3 and 5 that are undecided, they are persuadable. And so he focuses and has always focused in his career on getting those 3 and 5 that are persuadable and winnable, in addition to the easy yes. And so if you've taken our Kickstarter program, or our direct sales program, or really any of it, you'll see that we talk so much about the undecideds, and that like most of the marketing that we recommend is aimed at those undecideds, because that's how Russell has really made his career, is by not settling for just the easy yes. So retailers, which are the catalog sales again, they go for the easy yes every single time. And it makes sense for them because they have a certain number of readers. Let's say a retailer has 100 readers, and they know that each of those 100 readers are only going to buy 10 books a year each. And so what they're optimizing for is they want those readers to buy those 10 books from them rather than from another retailer. And so what they're going to do, they don't care really which book they're putting in front of readers. They just want to maximize the number of books that they can get that reader to buy. And so what they're going to do is they're going to put a bunch of easy yeses in. They're like, okay, this reader, we want them to buy 10 books from us. This reader likes political books, so we're going to put like Barack Obama's new memoir in front of them, and then we'll put like Trump's new memoir in front of them, or whatever it is. That was, I guess those are kind of a charged example, but not really. But yeah, like they're gonna put the thing that they think readers are gonna buy in front of them because they want to get to those 10 easy yeses. And so what that means is that a retailer can really only advocate for an author so much. And a lot of what a retailer can do is they can really just only ask you for like more books. So it's like, okay, we have all these readers who like sweet romance, and we have shown your sweet romance book to all those readers. And so now if you want to, like we've already gotten all the yeses we're going to get from this book. So now you have to give us another sweet romance book, or else we're not going to show you to those readers anymore. Like we need a new book from you, and then we'll show it again. And so that's kind of how retailers work. And that's why, yeah, I think that's why the author community has experienced a lot of burnout, is because like that is how retailers work. And nothing against retailers, we need retailers, but that is how retailers work, is they really don't have anything else that you can do with them except like give them another book. So what we believe and what we have seen in our data is that 60% of readers are persuadable, but are not typically shown your book. So this is the reader that reads sweet romance, but they would probably read a paranormal women's fiction if they could be persuaded to. But Amazon is never going to try to persuade them to, because they're going to give them the books that they know are a yes. So they're not going to show that sweet romance reader, they're not going to show them the paranormal women's fiction book. They're going to show them another sweet romance book. And this is a very simplified, very huge simplification of how the algorithms work, but it pretty much is how the algorithms work, how they're designed to work. It's very purposeful. So again, the retailer can only advocate for the individual author so much. They'll get you the easy yeses. They're not going to get you that other 60% who are persuadable. So the mindset shift to make is that when you start direct sales of any kind across fan-based platforms or whatever, you want to go for the 60% that are persuadable. So you can go for the easy yeses as well, but you also want to go for those persuadable people. And we teach that a lot. In really everything we do. That's like one of the foundations of our work, basically, is how do you go after those persuadable people. But then we also see this in Kickstarter, and people, like all of our students who do Kickstarter, they are like blown away by this. They're like, hey, this, like I did a I write weird Western. I cross-swapped with somebody who writes like sci-fi, like military sci-fi, and we each got readers from each other. Like they're just so confused because everything that they've heard before that is really that, weird Western people only read weird Westerns. But it's not true. And like we kind of intuitively know that as consumers, but as authors, we don't. So anyway, go for the other 60% that are persuadable. you're your own advocate. Your potential is likely 40 to 100x what you're making in revenue on a retailer. And so let me do the math for you. Again, that's like at the beginning, 10 to 20x the revenue per person. So instead of making $2 on an ebook, which is or $2 on a from a reader who would typically just buy your ebook, you're making $25 from that same reader because they bought a paperback or they bought like a package from you. So there's that. And then there's also about 4x the potential readers, but probably more. Because the other thing is that if you are not at the top of the charts for sweet romance, then your sweet romance book is still not being shown to all the sweet romance readers that Amazon has. So, them showing your book to the 20% easy yeses completely depends on how highly ranked the book is in the algorithms to begin with. So the very top book in those algorithms are like, let's say the top 10 books, those ones are shown to all 20, the whole 20%, all the sweet romance readers. But if your book is ranked, 100 or below, then that book's not even being shown to all those people. So we say, well, you could have 4x the readers because you have the 20% easy yeses and then you have the 60% persuadable, but it's actually probably more than that. So people have said that Brandon Sanderson, who had a $41 million Kickstarter, his current Kickstarter, he has a Kickstarter going right now for like mini figurines. But this was one that he did at the beginning of the year, and it was called Four Secret Novels, if you want to look it up. People in the publishing industry, traditional, indie, hybrid, everybody said, Brandon Sanderson's a unicorn. No one else can do this. And it's really not true. I don't think he's a unicorn. I think he just understands this math, this 40 to 100x. And he's very committed to direct sales. One of the most committed traditionally published authors to direct sales that I have ever seen. He has a team of 15. He has a warehouse. He has so many things where he was already so committed to direct sales before he did this Kickstarter. So it's not that he's a unicorn. He's a savvy business person, and he has always understood fandom versus readership. And so that's actually, I think that might be the next one. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so that's coming down the road. I'll talk about readership versus fandom. So mistake number 4, not making the case for your books when you move direct. So this is kind of an addendum to the last thing. So I was talking about the 20% easy yeses, talking about the 60% persuadable. And so when you're working with the 60% persuadable, you have to make the case for your books. You have to persuade those readers. So yeah, on retailers, your product page, optimize for the 20% easy yeses. When you go direct, you're going to aim for the 60% persuadable, and we'll talk about what that takes. So there's really 3 things. I'm going to pause for a moment. Okay, Moana says, so much great info here, Monica. Thank you for all of this. Yeah, happy to do this. The reason I'm doing this is because NINC is a great conference, but you have to have you have to hit certain minimums and qualifications, and they also don't record any of the sessions. So I felt like I had already done the presentation, so like it would be good to put it out for everybody to see, not just the people who are at NINC. Not that like there's nothing wrong with it just going to the NINC people, but just making it a little bit more accessible for people who either don't qualify for NINC or were not able to be at NINC this year, or were not able to come to the presentation also. So anyway, okay. So going back to this, what does it take to make the case? It's really 3 things. And this is what I think Russell and I teach pretty well. One is increased excitement. One is breaking through objections. And one is using psychological triggers. And so we'll talk about that very quickly. Okay, so this first one is an example of creating more excitement. So on a retailer page, on a product page, you only have so much space to really say anything. And so like for most people, you are just going to put a product description there, and maybe you'll do some A+ content or some images if the retailer allows that. A+ content is specific to Amazon, of course. But for the most part, you're just putting like a little bit of content there. And when you make the case, you basically want to put a lot more content. That's really all it is, to increase excitement. Is you want to find like many different angles, uh, because that's what's like one of those angles, or maybe a bunch of those angles together, is what is going to persuade someone to be more excited about your stuff. And so the other thing, there was an author at the conference who was talking about how they don't write very much because ebooks are an impulse purchase. So when you go to direct sales, that's not true anymore. You're not just trying to sell a single ebook. You're often trying to sell a bundle or a paperback or a special edition of something. And so you have to talk about it more, and it's not an impulse purchase anymore. Like that's so important. So when you're trying to sell something that's $5, you can kind of get away with like just a little bit of copy, but when you're trying to sell something that's $25, $50, $100, you have to be lengthy. And so you'll notice that Russell and I are very lengthy people a lot of the time. We talk a lot, but I think a lot of it is, again, we focus on the persuadable. And so we know that the longer that we talk about something, the more we're going to increase the excitement, and the more objections we're going to be able to break through. And so that is why we will sometimes, we'll do, like when we do our launches, for example. This is a nonfiction example, but it'll probably make a lot of sense. When we do our nonfiction examples, our current core product is $1,000, which is a lot. But we have found that it takes us about 4 hours to sell a $1,000 product to somebody. So that's usually like 2 webinars, and it can take less. But we found that like 4 hours, if we're on the phone with that person for 4 hours, like they're on a webinar or whatever, and of course they're interested. Like, again, there's easy yeses, there's persuadable yeses. And then there's no's. And so like the no people are never going to buy from us. But we found that we know it takes about 4 hours of live presentation for somebody to be a yes to us. And we go through all their questions, they're able to answer questions with us. And so that's what it takes for us. And so, for like a $50 to $100 product, it's going to take a little less. You probably don't have to get on the phone with people. You probably don't have to like have a podcast, which our podcast has over 50 episodes all about Kickstarter right now. So sometimes people spend time with us there. Like we have a group around it. So you probably don't have to do all of that. But this is my campaign from several months ago, selling a book series. And the first, so I'm going to show you six images. The first image is just the description. And so it's a description, it's a sample. Like this is probably all that I would put on a retailer page. So it's got a headline, it's got 3 very short paragraphs, a couple sentences each. It's got a link to the sample, so you can read the first 8 chapters. But that is not, when I put this on Kickstarter, that's not where I stopped. I also did images. I did more about the series. This next image, the third image, is about me as a writer and like what kind of books I write in general, plus more images. Then I did a series guide. I addressed some objections here. All series are minimal swearing, closed door, closed door, I guess, like sexual content. So no sex. I guess I would call that like low steam. At most PG-13 violence, so it's not gory. I'm handling objections there as well, but for the most part, I'm just trying to get people excited about this series. Then I did more about the series and talked about it from a different angle. Then I did more about the different points of views and like the other characters that play a big role in the series. And then I had some reviews, but basically I did probably 6 times the amount of content that I would normally have on the product page just about the one series. And that is so important when you go to direct sales. Sometimes we'll see on people's websites even that they have their product page, and I kind of blame this on Shopify and WooCommerce because that's what they have as their templates. But like, Shopify, WooCommerce templates are like they basically they look a lot like Amazon's retailer page, but they have an image, they have a description, they have like a spot for reviews, they have a buy link, they have, like you can put a couple images there, but it's not that much different. And so we see people kind of driving traffic to these pages, sometimes even sending paid traffic to the pages, which I think is like not the best idea. And it's like, you're probably going to have to do, like, one is that you're going to have to do more to sell directly from your website or from a Kickstarter or a Patreon. You're going to have to do more than what you do on Amazon, because Amazon readers, they already get like you get that it's a book. They get that it's like in the genre or whatever. They're Amazon already has their credit card. Like there's all these things that are nice, that Amazon's developed a lot of trust with people, versus when you're selling on your website, you're not going to be able to do the same amount of work that you did for Amazon or that Amazon has. You're going to have to do a little bit more persuasion. You're going to have to address more objections. For example, like people want to know, if you're doing from your website, people want to know, like, when am I going to get the thing? How's it going to be delivered? What do you do with my credit card information? Are you going to add me to your email list? Will I get it right away? Like, am I going to be able to download it? Is it going to be easy? Is it going to be like a bad experience? And so, and same with Kickstarter, it's kind of similar. Not as many objections, but people, like something, I think I read somewhere that like over half or like 30% of Kickstarters never get delivered, which is crazy. But yeah, like people have been burned by Kickstarters in the past. I know that was one of my hesitations using Kickstarter. I was like, I've backed projects and like people never sent the thing. So there are just more things that you have to work through. Okay, the second example is from Lindsay Baroker, who, and this is for Patreon. So Lindsay, I encourage you to go check out her Patreon, first of all. It's so good. But one of the things that was cool about it is that she has this like really long FAQ. And so if you're thinking about like, what does it mean to break through objections? Like, what is that? You can just think of what's the FAQ? It's really about the frequently asked questions. And so you'll see, like Russell and I do, on the nonfiction side, but also on the fiction side, Russell and I do a lot of Q&As. Like anytime we do a launch, we have a Q&A. And a lot of that is so that people can ask their questions, and then we can, and like almost every question they ask is an objection to wanting to buy our thing. So for example, one of the questions we get a lot is like, should I, as an author, use Kickstarter? Here's my situation. And that it is a question. It is the author having a question. It is us trying to help them and answer the question, but also their question is an objection to why they don't want to buy this, because they're like, well, does this even apply to me? That's an objection. And so you can think about that for your own stuff, or you can go look at Lindsay Baroker's page and get some ideas, because she has an FAQ on there, and every single one of the answers to these questions is addressing an objection. So here are the questions that she answers on her Patreon page. Who am I? Why am I on Patreon? What's in it for the reader? And so she goes through like all her different levels. She tells people who it's for, who it's not for. She kind of keeps going. How are the ebooks delivered? What format are they delivered in? Because this answers the question of like, I don't want to deal with BS, basically. Like, I just want to like pay for this. I want it to get the ebook downloaded easily. I don't want to mess with any tech. She answers, I want to, what's your publishing schedule? What are your next few books? She answers, what if I only want fantasy? but you also write sci-fi. What if I only want the books from this series, but not that series? She answers, how often do you publish? So like, what they're really asking is like, how often am I going to get charged for a book? Um, the answer is, can I loan books to friends and family? Why did you start Patreon? That's kind of like why Patreon, but it's a um, deeper look at like why she started it. So she kind of goes into more of that. But this entire thing is just breaking through objections to people becoming patrons of her. All right. Did I go through? Oh, okay. So then I didn't really talk about psychological triggers. What I will say, if you are listening on the podcast or if you are watching, what I will say is that we have a chapter about psychological triggers in our book. And I think people kind of breeze over it. But to me, it's like the most valuable, like probably the most valuable chapter in the entire book. It's called, so it's chapter 6. And so the book is called Get Your Book Selling on Kickstarter, if you're listening. But it is called, chapter 6. It's called Maximizing the Buyer's Psychology of a Kickstarter Campaign. And there's even this little like brain/head/thinking cap/word bubble thing in here that goes through the 6 categories. And then there's like a detailed so if you have the paperback, it's on page 106, but there is like a detailed list of like 30 different psychological triggers grouped into 6 categories and how to use them and like what like why people resonate with them, all sorts of stuff. Has a fiction and a nonfiction example. It's really, really good. But I think people just like breeze over them and don't realize that this like gold mine is in here. And I know it's crazy. It's a little crazy of me to like say that one of my chapters is a gold mine, but yeah, I do. I think it's a really good chapter. It's like 30, looks like it's about 30 pages long. So it doesn't take too long to read, but definitely read that because you and try to come up with examples as you go. And like, because like really, gosh, like so much of marketing and sales is just using these psychological triggers, like just layering them into your book. So to me, doing marketing and sales without knowing psychological triggers really well is like writing a fiction book without knowing tropes. Like it's like that foundational where you can get a lot of things technically right, but if you don't add in like psychological triggers are like, they're kind of like the salt on your steak. Like it's not going to taste good without it. So I just really recommend, I really recommend reading that chapter. Okay, so we have a question. If we backed the Kickstarter and got the ebooks, when will we actually be getting them? So does that, are you asking about Get Your Book Selling on Kickstarter? Because you should have that ebook already. If you're talking about the more recent one, we're actually sending those out in like probably like next week. So we're finishing the backer kit survey right now. And by we, it's actually me. I'm the one doing it because Russell's in Paris. Okay, so we can talk more about that at some point. But I want to kind of finish this out because this has gone on a little bit longer. So we have three more mistakes. Okay, Sherry, let's handle. Can you email support@writermba.com? Because I think that'll probably be better because I'm not sure which campaign you backed or what books you're looking for. So definitely email and we will be able to sort it out. Okay. All right. Okay. So mistake number 5, assuming that readership equals fandom. So readership, we're just going to go through these, kind of pull them all up at once. Okay. So readership versus fandom. What do I mean when I say that? So readership is it's basically somebody who has read your books, of course. And when you've built your readership through a retailer, which most authors have, customer relationship belongs to the platform, not to you. Those readers often stay with the platform. So if they read on Amazon, they read on Kobo, whatever, if their favorite author, is publishing somewhere else, they're probably not going to move over. And then they also invested a lot of time. So they've read your books or whatever it is. Maybe they've spent 8 hours with your book, with a single book. Maybe they've read your whole series and they've spent like 40 hours. They've read your entire catalog. You have 50 books and they've read them all. So they've invested a lot of time. They haven't necessarily invested a lot of money though, or even if they have, in their mind, they haven't put it all together. So what do I mean by that? Like, I guess what I mean is like, if you have like a $5 book, so like somebody has bought your book for $5, and then they buy the second book for another $5, and then the third book for another $5, and so on. Then in their minds, they may not put together that is they've spent $15 on you as an author. And so they could have bought your book, like bought like 20 books from you, but they may not realize that they have then spent like $100 on you as an author. Versus if they did that all at once, then they would realize it. And so that sounds a little crazy, but if you think about like going to a coffee shop, so I go to a coffee shop with my husband probably like 2 to 3 days a week. And we buy, I buy like a latte. It's $6 or whatever. like coffee has gotten so expensive these days, but yeah, it's like $6. And I get it every single time because I want to work there. And so we've been doing that, let's say for 6 months. It's probably been a year or two that we've been doing that consistently. And so I'm spending $18 with that restaurant for the past, like $18 a week for the past year or possibly 2 years. So let's just say it's 2 years, so 100. So like when I look at that, it's like, wow, I've spent $1,800 with this restaurant over the course of 2 years. Like that is a lot of money to spend. And to spend on coffee, which I don't even really drink. I only drink it when I like have to, because I want to work at the coffee shop for several hours and use it as like an office, basically. So it's like that's a lot of money, but when it's parceled out in $5 increments or $6 increments, it just like in my mind, it's I would say like, yeah, I grab a coffee there every once in a while. Like if I had not done that calculation, I would be like, yeah, I don't know, I've spent like a couple $100 on this restaurant. And I don't think I would put together that like, wow, I spent like almost $2,000 on this restaurant. And I think it's the same with readers. Like they basically, they may have invested some money, but what they see is that they've invested a lot of time. Versus a fandom. So with a fandom, the customer relationship belongs to you, not to the retailer. So I don't believe that someone can be a true fan of yours if their loyalty is more to the retailer than it is to you. So if they're not willing to follow you off of that retailer, I don't think they're a fan. And think about it this way: if Taylor Swift stopped publishing, like let's say you're a fan or like a listener of Taylor Swift, and she stopped publishing her work on Spotify, for example, and you were like, yeah, I'm going to stop listening to her then. Like, I'm just not going to listen to Taylor Swift anymore because she's not on Spotify. Then I don't think you're really a fan of Taylor Swift. Like I would argue, you're a casual listener of Taylor Swift. Yet on retailers, people believe that they're building like that if they have a ton of readers on Amazon or whatever, in Kindle Unlimited, wherever it is, they believe that they have a ton of fans as well. And it's not really true. Like we see that all the time where that same person will run a Kickstarter and they can't, like they have like 500,000 people who have read this book, but they can't even get like 500 of them to back their Kickstarter campaign. So we see that all the time, and it's like, you have a ton of readers, but I'm not convinced that you have a huge fandom, because, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can have a great career having either a fandom or a readership. And like Russell, he's had a great career basically just having a fandom. And there are tons of authors who have had great careers just having a readership, but you have to know, like, you just have to know what it is. And so to me, the fan will follow you anywhere. They are your customer. They're not Amazon or some other retailer's customer. And then they've invested time, money, space, and energy. And so I didn't put the slide in here about fandom, but fandom is like, the way to create a fan is to get them to invest more in you, basically. More in you, more in your work. So time, money, space, and energy are the 4 categories. And we think that Kickstarter and Patreon and some of these other platforms, they kind of naturally and organically help readers invest more into you. So let's see if I talk about this. Okay, so again, I'm showing the same reader journey that I was talking about earlier, and showing that the last 3 stages of this reader journey are fan, true fan, and evangelist. All right, so that's pretty much what we're talking about, is like, how do you get, it's people at the end, at the bottom of your funnel, basically. So it's like the smallest group of people. Only about a fraction of your readership, about 10%, will become fans. But ideally, they will follow you everywhere. They will shower you with larger sums of money. So they'll be willing to spend $100 on you instead of $5 on you. Also, the act of creating fandom products and charging more for them, that act creates more fans. And so, like I was saying earlier with Amazon, the only thing that a retailer can ask you to do is give them another book, like the book that you've already given them that sold really well. But on the fan-based platforms, the thing that the fan-based platforms are asking you to do, and the readers on there are asking you to do, they're not asking you to give them more. They're asking you to give them something cooler and more engaging. So it's a different thing. So it's not actually even the same product that you're selling on these different places. And then a question to ask yourself is, how deep can your fans go with you? And for a lot of people, if I said, I'm a fan of you and I want to spend $100 in your store, like, a lot of authors wouldn't even have like $100 worth of stuff for me to buy. Or if I was like, and then some people would, but what if I said, I have $500, like, I have $500, I want to spend it on you and your work, what can you give me? And a lot of people wouldn't be able to come up with something, because authors are basically just taught to sell ebooks at $5 on a retailer. And the only thing they're taught is like, like write more books, like, give me 20 books for $5. Now I have $100 package for you. But really, there's so much other stuff that you can do. There's merchandise, there's audio commentary, there's like a Q&A. So if somebody was like, like, even for the person that has like 3 books, if somebody, like, if I had 3 books only and somebody was like, I want to give you $500, I would know exactly what to tell them. I'd be like, cool, like, you can like drive out to St. Louis or fly out to St. Louis and we can have lunch and we'll talk about the books and I'll tell you what I'm doing with the rest of the series. Like, we can do some Q&As. I can send you some like original pages of the books. There's so many things that you could do for that fan, but it's going to be a different product than like, okay, I have 3 ebooks for you. People are not going to pay $500 for 3 ebooks. Okay, so point made, I think. You can make a full-time living forever with a small fandom. I think Russell is a great example of that. In the process of creating fans, you also attract more readers. So authors right now, they're kind of taught, and it's because like this is the way retailers function, that you get a ton of readers at the top and that a small percentage of them become fans. I don't know if authors realize that the reverse works as well. So you could focus entirely on fans, and those fans will go and find you more readers. So you'll get a bunch of, so if you just went like all in on your fans, you would get a bunch of readers as well, who are like not necessarily fans, but they're gonna kind of come over to your stuff anyway. So it actually, the funnel, the marketing funnel works both ways. So it works well if you're reader focused. You'll have some that kind of come down to the point of the funnel, but then you can flip that funnel over and you can have the tiny little point at the top and you can just nurture that and you'll see it build out a readership. And so I think that's something that authors are trying to understand right now, is really that you're going to like most authors have learned one way to do this, which is get a lot of readers on retailers and fill out your funnel that way, but you can also get a lot of fans and find more readers. And so when you put these two things next to each other and you're doing both, you actually will expand your audience really quickly. So do instead would be the fandom focus. Somebody asked, is this going to be recorded? I'm at work and just got on, can't stay, but I want to hear. Yes, it's being recorded. So you will be able to watch this. So Shannon said, I love this. The fans are for the retailers, not you. Yep. Sherry says, I hope it's recorded. I haven't been able to write everything down. So much good information. Yes, it's recorded. Okay. So this is, again, the same chart for the podcast listeners. I won't kind of reiterate what it is. It's that grid with the reader journey and then the retailers at the top. And so with this chart, what I really wanted to show is in this red box where the fan, true fan, and evangelists are. You can see that, oh gosh, I don't have my presentation up. Let me make sure I'm sharing this. Okay, sorry about that. So let me just go back and make sure. Okay. All right, so I've mostly been talking. Okay, so this was the 10 stages of audience. Here's the fan, true fan, and evangelist at the end of it. And then here's the sales funnel journey. So you've got the reader journey in the column on the left again. You've got the retailers across the top. And so if you look at these three rows, the fan, the true fan, and the evangelist, you'll see that retailers are not great at helping you develop fans, true fans, and evangelists. They're just not. And that's nothing, nothing against retailers. It's just not what they're built to do. They're very good at helping you get your book in front of the right target audience, which is why Russell and I often say retailers are very good at finding you casual readers. They're not good at creating fans. When you look at the fan-based platforms and direct sales, it's the opposite. They're, not great at helping you find new readers at all. Like, you've got to bring your readers to the platforms far more than you do on retailers. And so we teach you how to do that. A lot of it is just email list is kind of how we teach it. But, they're very good at helping create fans, true fans, and evangelists. All right. So mistake number 6, mixing donation with value proposition. This one's a quick one. I'm going to try to run through it again pretty quickly. Okay, so one thing that we see, and I think this is because of the label of crowdfunding, when there's, so when authors believe, they have their preconceptions about what crowdfunding is. And so we just see this sometimes where they write sales pages, or even on like Patreon, Kickstarter, we see this across all of it. Even on direct sales through a website, we see this as well. Like we'll sometimes see, for direct sales from a website, we'll sometimes see people who are like, I know it sucks to have to buy it direct from me. I know that it's much easier to buy it on Amazon. I know that, I'm not able to ship it as fast. Like they're kind of like just very down on themselves. And then they're like, but, it's better for me if you buy from me. So, how much do you like me? Like, please buy from me directly, even though you could buy it at Amazon for like the same price or cheaper, and it would get there faster to you. And so we see that a lot on direct sales. We see it on Kickstarter, where people are like, this project is my life and my soul. I've been working on it for years and years, and I don't really have the money to produce it. So if you could, can you please help me produce it? And it's like, okay, so let's see. I have a question. So Tom asks, aren't some publishing projects products costing more on Kickstarter than they will end up being on Amazon. Sometimes, but and if they are, then that is tough. So what we recommend is doing exclusivity of any sort. Like either the product is never going to retailers, so maybe it's only going into your direct sales store where you can control the price. So there's that. There's limited editions. We also recommend like putting stuff into the bundle, because like most products are not really products, they're bundles on Kickstarter or on Patreon. It's usually a reward tier that has like multiple things in it. So we just say like put stuff into that is not ever going to be on a retailer. So exclusivity of some kind. And then also people getting it ahead of time is also valuable to people. So if it's like, okay, you can get this book 6 months before everyone else, there's value to that. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, the way we handle that is exclusivity. So, and we did this exercise with somebody where they were like, my book is, $15 in paperback on Amazon. Like, how do I kickstart that? Because we tell people like, don't sell your book for less than 25. And the reason why is because once you factor in shipping and handling costs, once you factor in printing it yourself, whenever you print books yourself, you have to ship them to you first and then ship them on. Usually, I mean, you can do like Ingram Spark direct to reader. You can do that, but then you don't get to sign it. You don't touch it. Like you don't get to package it with other stuff. So for most campaigns, you're shipping it to you and then shipping it to the reader, and that's more expensive than what Amazon does, which is they print it, like they get the order, they print it in their warehouse, and they ship it directly to you. So when we did this exercise with the reader or with the person who was asking the question, they had a $15 paperback on Amazon. And we said, well, the way to do this is you can add an audio commentary of the book, or you can add a Q&A. So like people can get, like a group Q&A where people can get on the Q&A with you. So those are two options. You can also do a signed copy. You can also do a personalized copy. You can also do a different version of the book. So like everything I'm saying, it's a specific idea, like it's a tactic, but the overarching strategy is exclusivity. So doing something that they cannot get on the retailer. When you do that, they cannot compare. Like there's no way to price shop basically, which I guess I actually say in this slide. So let me just go back to the slide. Okay, so with a donation, so I'm going to kind of start here with the donation. Customers have to figure out how much something is worth to them. So it's leading with charity. If it's like, oh, I need your help to get this, to get this off the ground. That's usually fine. But when it's more like, you could get this cheaper somewhere else, but I want you to buy it direct from me. Or you could get this more conveniently from somewhere else, but I'd rather you buy it direct from me for the same price or for a small discount. It tends to be leading with charity. So how much you're basically asking people to put a value on how much they like you. That value is going to be both emotional and ephemeral. So on a Patreon subscription, for example, if somebody's subscribed to you just because they like you and they're not really getting anything from it, well, when they look at like the minute that there's a recession or the minute that, they, like if they lose their job, well, of course, if you lose your job, you're going to start cutting a lot of bills. But, the minute that things get a little bit hard, the car breaks down, whatever it is, they're going to go through subscriptions and start canceling them. So on Patreon, this is really important that, the value is not ephemeral. The value is questionable when compared to other retailers or platforms. So this is really Tom's question, that, how are you charging $25 for a paperback on Kickstarter when it goes to a retailer and it's only $15, or whatever the price is? Well, you have to, like when readers or when buyers start to see that, then they're going to start questioning, like, can I, now they're having to question, like, do I like this person enough to like spend the extra few bucks to buy it directly from them? Or do I want this sooner? So I'm willing to pay more when I know it's going to be cheaper in 6 months. And so now you're asking them to put a lot of thought into how much they like you, or how much they want it. And the minute you start doing that, well, the purchase is no longer a no-brainer. And so you're not going to get as many people buying it. Versus if you focus on value proposition. And so this is what, again, this is a lot of what Russell and I teach in the Kickstarter course, but I think it applies to all these platforms. Value proposition. Customer is crystal clear on the exchange of value you're offering for the price. So like if I were going to talk about my paperbacks and compare, like if somebody said, why should I buy a $25 paperback from you when I know it's just going to be $18.99 on retailers later on? I would say, well, this book is signed, it's on better paper, it's much higher quality printing, and the book is not going to be $25 or the book is not going to be $15 on retailers because the information's too valuable. It's going to be $25 or $26 on retailers. So like when we look at this Kickstarter book, for example, which is printed on, it's printed on like thicker paper. It's got like a nicer cover. It's just like a really well done print job. But when we get this book on retailers and paperback, which we hired somebody to do, so hopefully they're working on it. So when that happens though, we're probably not going to make it $15 because it's a 400-page book, and because the information is really valuable, we're probably going to make it, more like I'm thinking like $26.99 for even just the paperback, or at least $22.99. And also, like they will not have, like it's almost a year old now. Like this book has been out since December of last year, and it's been out in paperback since March. So we offered a lot of exclusivity. So people can't buy it right now. They just have to wait. Like, and we get people asking for the paperback all the time, and we're like, you just have to wait till we get it up, because we we don't have. We actually do have some extra, but we're not like really shipping them right now. So that's the other piece of exclusivity. But yeah, I think it just comes down to understanding what the value of the product is. I like to use this formula. The value is at least 2 times the price elsewhere, so that when people are price shopping, so if I'm giving you a $25 paperback, I want to add other stuff to that to make it worth at least $50. And so when we do a Kickstarter campaign, it may be a 25, like the main thing you're getting may be a $25 paperback, but you're also getting the ebook, you're maybe getting the audiobook, you're getting a bunch of bonuses. Like there's a bunch of other stuff you're getting, so that adds up to at least $50 or usually more. And then the value is not exclusive to the platform. Or sorry, the value is exclusive to the platform, because when you do that, people can't price shop. So I kind of already said that, but yeah. All right, so last one, mistake number 7, underestimating the value of non-exclusivity for direct sales. So this is just based on some of the data that we've collected. So you don't have to be wide in digital. So this is kind of for the KDP people, KDP select people. But what we've seen with authors who are wide versus authors who are in KU, when you're wide, even if you just pull out your books that are in the, like your main books in the campaign, you pull them out of KDP Select for a period, we see those publishing projects go to 50 to 70% profitability, as opposed to 30 to 50% profitability, pretty much right off the bat. So the reason why is that digital products balance the rising cost of physical products. But this is like almost across the board. If you are wide, then you are probably in the 50 to 70% range of profitability. Like we see this over and over again. If you are not wide, then you're very lucky if you hit 50% profitability, and like more common is the 30%. Authors who are wide or pull their the focus of their Kickstarter campaign wide during their project, they tend to raise about 40% more than they would have. And a lot of that is because of the digital rewards. So lots of backers love digital rewards on Kickstarter. I don't know if this is also true on Patreon. I think it probably is, but I just don't have all the data on it the way I do with Kickstarter. But we pretty much know that those people raise 40% more. And almost all of our, like we have a bunch of, actually, yeah, we have a bunch of people who hit, over 10K, probably like 6 or 7 now. And that's very new. We just started to see those over the summer. But we have like 6 or 7 students who have hit 10K or like 9,600, like was I think one of them, on their very first Kickstarter campaign. And almost, I think every single one of those people, they were wide. So we see people who have KU books and stuff, but they're like, I haven't done this. I kind of want to, but I also don't want people to feel like we're like so pro wide. But we've just like kind of anecdotally, I think that the average raise in a campaign for KDP Select authors is probably significantly lower, like several $1,000s lower than it is for wide authors. Just because I'm thinking like the wide authors that I've seen are usually raising about 3,000 to 10,000, and the KU authors that I've seen are raising about 1,000 to 6 or 7,000. The range is just different. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit easier to do these. Like you can definitely do this if you're in KDP Select, and you can also be in KDP Select and have the book essentially wide. So if you do like a pre-order, or if you like launch on Kickstarter first, for example, then you're not dealing with KDP Select for that series. So you can definitely do it, but we've just seen like the wide authors are really they're just doing like a lot better financially on Kickstarter. So if you're KU committed, you can use fan-based platforms as a first revenue stream, or you can increase your digital products. So instead of using ebooks for digital, because that's what is, I don't want to say stuck in exclusivity because I don't want to be negative, but like that is the thing that you're kind of missing in your campaign. You can come up with other digital stuff like audio commentary, digital printables, posters, digital artwork, world building guides, and more. So you can kind of make up for it that way. But we just see right now, we see the wide authors doing a little bit better. Okay. So I saw a bunch of questions. Okay. I'm partially wide and plan to go back. Oh, sorry. I'm partially wide and plan to go back to wide. Okay, cool. That's from Gina. Okay, here's a question. Sherry asks, can you do Kickstarter for pre-order items even if you're already using Patreon for early access to your stories? Yeah, I don't see why not. I think with Kickstarter and Patreon, lots of people are interested in using both. And I think it goes back to Patreon's a subscription membership model. So there are only going to be certain types of readers who are attracted to that, like just to be realistic. And they're probably more like serial readers, realistically as well. So Kickstarter can be a way to kind of find more fans or also find different fans. So yeah, like a lot of your Patreon people, they may not also back your Kickstarter, but some of your email list, maybe they weren't willing to sign up for your Patreon because it's like an ongoing subscription and they don't like those, but or it's a serialized thing, so they don't like that, but they might be willing to do your Kickstarter campaign because it's like, okay, this looks a lot like what I get on Amazon. I'm just pre-ordering a book. I pay once, I get my thing, and then we move on, right? Like I don't owe you anything beyond that. And so I think it could be a different reader for you. And really doing it as a pre-order, it like as far as the KU stuff goes, it could be that it goes to Patreon first and then it goes to Kickstarter. and then it goes to retailers. It can definitely be that too. And I think there are lots of authors who are kind of struggling with this, of like how they want to use all these platforms, and when do I publish at each platform, and like what purpose does each platform serve in my business. And even I'm trying to figure that out, because I want to use all these platforms, and I'm not doing so. I'm kind of mostly in on Kickstarter right now. All right, so hopefully that answers that. Okay, so that is the end. Went a little bit over. I actually got through this presentation and more in an hour. Had an ink and had time for questions. So this one went a little long. That's okay though. Let's see, one more question. Can I put it on my Patreon, leave it there, and do a Kickstarter? Yeah, I think you can, but it's going to take away the backers that would be there. I don't know if that makes sense. So like anytime you're dividing your resources, or dividing your attention, dividing your audience, you're going to have, fewer results on both platforms, really. So you'll have some people who are like, I don't want to do, like I don't want to do Patreon, I'll do Kickstarter. And some people who are like, I don't want to do Kickstarter, I'll do Patreon. And so I don't know. I think if it were me, if I had already set things up on Patreon and I was already kind of like consistent with it, I think I would probably leave it up, and I would look for readers outside of my Patreon subscribers, because I really do think that that is a different person in many ways. That is willing to do that is like excited to do the Patreon. To me, the Patreon is actually like your corest fans, because the Kickstarter thing is like it's essentially like, I'm willing to buy your book. I'm just willing to spend more money than I would on a retailer, in the sense that like maybe I'm backing your campaign for $100 instead of buying your book on a retailer for like $5. But with a Patreon, it's like, I'm not just backing you once, I'm backing you like every single month until I remember to cancel, if I want to cancel, or until I decide to cancel. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps. All right, let me pull this back up again. Okay. Okay, and then Ms. Swift says, thank you, very helpful. Yeah, happy to share all this. Okay, so more resources. The Kickstarter group, again, facebook.com/groups/Kickstart Your Novel. And then this is another resource that I like, especially for the Patreon people, because we're starting to get into teaching like subscriptions, memberships, but we're not doing a ton with it yet. We don't have a course on it or anything. It's not a big part of our courses. So I really recommend this group called Subscription for Authors that is on Facebook. And it's probably easier to search for it than to click on that link or type in that link. But basically, it's this team that's building a software product called Ream. And so Ream is essentially subscriptions for authors. It's like a future Patreon competitor. But the co-founders of that are really, really smart. They're kind of like a Gen Z age range, but which is good. I think it's a benefit, because I think subscription models, a lot of the readers for that are much younger. And so I think that's why both of them have really been pretty successful with, one of them is very, very successful with Patreon. Her name is Amelia Rose, and she does like serialization on Patreon. And I'm assuming she's going to move to Ream once they're up and live and ready. And then the other co-founder is Michael Evans, and he is like really, really good at this too. He's a writer. He is like a Harvard student. He is, he's worked for like a number of entrepreneurs. He's just like way beyond his years, basically, and has just a really, really strong understanding of the mechanics at play for subscriptions. So definitely a super interesting guy to talk to as well. And so I just really recommend their group too. and I barely ever recommend groups that are not mine and Russell's, but they're very awesome people, and looking forward to learning more from them. And then of course we have a book, Get Your Book Selling on Kickstarter. I obviously really recommend it, but I think if you're going to do a Kickstarter, or even if you're just going to do direct sales, there's so much in this book that I think is really helpful. And I talked about chapter 6 and how I think it's literally just about psychological triggers. I think it's just a really, really good thing to get into if you haven't looked into that yet. That's at kickstartyournovel.com. You can find links to where to purchase it everywhere. All right, so that's it. If there are any more questions, I'm happy to take them. Yeah, that's the end of the presentation though. And we've been on for an hour and a half, which was not my intention, but that's okay. This will be eight podcast episodes when it comes out. All right, so I don't see questions. I think I'll give people another minute. I will. So Russell and I are probably going to do this presentation again as well. At some point, I think we'll probably be presenting it at conferences coming up, and we'll probably be putting more of it out. But for now, it'll be just on our YouTube channel and on our podcast eventually. All right. Oh, okay. Seeing a couple thank yous. Thank you for coming. I know it was last minute. Thanks for taking time out of your day to stay live. There are 10 people live still, so that's pretty awesome for what was essentially like an impromptu webinar. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Moana. Thank you, Tom. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.